What is going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 6 of the Littleroot Record. This is an episode and an interview that I've been looking forward to. This week, we are joined by VGC legend and veteran Chalkey. Chalkey, how are you?
Legend might be giving me too much credit, but I'll do my best. I'm great, and I'm happy to be here. Grateful to get to share some old man stories with a nice little crowd.
Yes, and that is one of the reasons why you are a legend. You have been in this sphere of competitive Pokemon, specifically competitive doubles, longer than I think any other active player, or close to be longer than any other active player. Why don't we just dive straight into it? Just who are you? How did you get into Pokemon? How long you've been playing?
All right, well, my name is Chalky. Outside of Pokemon, I make most of my living just kind of doing program evaluation for homeless shelter work, particularly homelessness due to domestic violence. So I'm really big in the nonprofit world, uh, which is not what we're talking about today. So, in terms of who I am and how I got into VGC, you know, the part that makes me sound 1,000 years old right off the bat is that I've been playing since longer than we've actually called it VGC. Um, my first competitive Pokemon event was actually in 2005,
Yep,
and
Battle
and,
in
and the,
Seattle.
you did your research. Amazing. All right. Yes, wonderful, wonderful. So for those who are not a million years old, basically what would happen was there was online qualifiers, three different stages. So the first one was just anyone in the U.S. or Canada could enter, and if you got into the top eight, you'd go into the next round, and if you got to the top four in the following round, you move on, and then the last round to decide who would get to go to the national championship, you had to be in the top two, which makes it sound a little bit more prestigious than it is because if you the qualification was a very very early stage of online, so I wouldn't even call it battling to be perfectly honest, but nonetheless we had to fight pretty hard to get to where we were, and this was actually really cool because it was at the top of the Space Needle in Seattle, which is exactly why they called it Battle in Seattle. Um, Everything was green, both to celebrate Seattle and to celebrate Pokemon Emerald version just coming out. And what they ended up doing was they mailed me a copy of Pokemon Emerald a month before it was released to the public, and they said, "Congratulations on qualifying for Battle in Seattle. You're going to be competing on this cart. You're going to you have 1 month to just get a team ready on Emerald version. So good luck, have fun." And so we all frantically played, and I was still trying to get through what I think were like the very earliest of cutscenes in a Pokemon game, just frantically playing this game on the plane. And I got absolutely crushed in the actual event. So there are other people from Battle in Seattle that still play. So Stephen Morioka, who
Mm-hmm.
uh, is a phenomenal player, far better than I've ever been. He also got top eight in a U.S. national championship a long time ago, and his brother won the U.S. national championships back in 2010. So his whole family is
I was going to
phenomenally
say his
good.
his mom played as well.
Oh, his mom is also very good. Yeah, his mom did not do Battle of Seattle, but his mom did play in the following year in the
Yep.
national championships for the 10th anniversary of the game. And so she was, I want to say, top 32 in Nats that year. So the whole family is just amazing. And so I'm definitely my small solace is that as old as I am not the oldest player there is. But anyway, so Battle Seattle was just a wonderful experience. I got to really meet some great people, and I think that uh, where I grew up specifically, and it's up for debate whether this is a period of the time or a period of the culture, but where and when I grew up, Pokemon was very heavily stigmatized, and so it was not something that you would openly talk about if you wanted any sort of survival in a school society kind of thing. And so being able to be surrounded by people who just love Pokemon and just being able to talk about it in more than a surface level was just such a wonderful experience for me, and something that at the time I really didn't have an outlet for anywhere else. And so I just kept coming back and falling in love with it. And the following year, I also qualified for nationals, doing that there they called it Journey Across America because it was the 10th anniversary tour, and where they had so many events. It was a phenomenal year, and I think I wouldn't go as far as to say every state had something because that's taking it a little far, but I think it was way more than your typical run of the mill BGC season, even in today's cycles. And so
Yeah,
what you would have to do is,
it was a mall tour, right?
yeah, most of them were malls. We didn't quite have a concept of esports back then. So most of them that you would there was an online qualifier, and if you were, and this time instead of being in the top X, you just had to be one of the first top 64 to actually like meet the minimum threshold requirements. And then once you got to that, so that was how they controlled for size. And then um, the wording is inconsistent just because like we were still in the early stages of competitive Pokemon. So like some places would call it a regional tournament, some would call it a regional championship. I think players who research this these days will retcon it to be a regional championship, which is fine with me. It gives me way more credit than is actually due. But you had to win one of those to qualify for nationals that year, and so I managed to win the Cincinnati one. And then my childhood friend who lived about 4 doors away from me ended up winning the Michigan one. And so we both went to nationals that year, which was in New York, Bryant Park specifically, which is also just really hilarious because Hulk Hogan was doing the commentary. For those who didn't know that, um, yeah, he was paid thousands of dollars just to
Talk about Body
wax.
Slam.
Yeah, the infamous quote is there's a clip of him saying like, "Oh yeah, Snorlax used Body Slam. That's got to be the best move in the whole game." And someone was trying to ask him what his favorite Pokemon was, and because he is uh, understandably uninitiated in Pokemon, the only thing he said was he just picked the safe answer of like, well, Pikachu sports my colors of yellow and red, so that's got to be it. And I don't think he actually knew that many other Pokemon, so he just kind of. But he was a celebrity and he was having fun. So and then JAA and Battle Seattle were both just phenomenal experiences. And then I think 2007 we didn't really have a whole holistic collective competitive Pokemon experience, but then we had a 2008 thing that was basically 2 qualifiers in California and New York. Where these ones, if you top eighted those, you just went straight to Worlds. And 2009 was the first year we actually called it VGC. And we'll just say the rest is history. I think I've spent way too long on the first question, so I'll
No,
give the mic to you.
this is really good. This is one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on is because you have seen this entire growth of the scene from it being online qualifiers where it was like a quiz, and honestly the prize was just you get a game before everyone else does, to where we are right now. It's been a massive growth, and that does bring me to my next question. From the time we started calling it VGC to right now, what is the biggest change that you've seen in general, like in the way that the game's played, in the way that the tournaments are structured? What do you think like the biggest thing was?
It's funny because the way you phrase that made me think of stuff like just the movement to team preview in 2011 to the movement to best of three in 2016, moving towards all sorts of things. But really, the biggest thing, and apologies if some of those dates are a little bit off. I'm basing it off like kind of like the general, not like what they did at Worlds or the higher levels. But um, the I mean, without a doubt, the biggest thing is just the size in general. I think that I'd like to believe that as society has moved on in its general natural course of things, Pokemon has become less stigmatized as a concept, and so more people feel comfortable not just playing, but also like going to large events and just being a part of that scene. And it really speaks volumes to just how many people we had. So I mean, I think in fairness, 2010 and 2011 were wildly popular. Like you have this. There's a lot of talk about how like this coming NAIC is going to be the biggest tournament ever, and how 2023 had the biggest regional ever. and it's true with an asterisk. It's true in the sense that biggest events when you combine TCG, VGC, and Go. Um, yes, like 2023 did have the biggest events. But if you're asking like what was the highest attendance for specifically VGC of the oldest age bracket, we actually had in 2010 we had a VGC event in Newark that hit 768 people, and then that same Secaucus, not Newark, and then we had that same year same venue 1 year later we had 1,024. And so we're only just getting to those numbers again, like pretty recently. But that was just VGC for the day. Like we didn't have the share the venue space with TCG, and Go didn't even exist back then. But the size of just how many people we can accommodate at the same time is phenomenal, and really really something to be proud of and impressive. And it really speaks volumes that there are some regional championships from earlier in BGC where like let's say in 2013 if you had 7 wins, that was a top 8, that was 100 championship points or the equivalent from that time period thereof. And 7 wins today, like if you have a really stacked, very largely attended event, you might still end up with like 40 CP, which is
Yeah.
it's really something because the number of wins to get points has not profoundly changed, but the number of CP that you actually get, and then like is lowering while the bar is rising, and there's just so many, and the likelihood that you're going to run into someone who's like incredibly good is so much higher for every given round. So like um, it's not all just um, old man complaining if somebody says like the tournaments get harder every year, because they really do. And I say that in an empowering way of just I'm so blown away by just how many wonderfully talented people there are.
Yeah, and that is something I've heard from you in the past, other players who have been around the game for a while. That one of the big changes that they've seen is that the general skill level of your average player is just higher. Can you go more into that on why you think that just today the average VGC player is just has more experience or is in a better spot than they were, say, even a decade ago, back in the start of Gen 6 in 2014?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of my half joking, half crying inside things that I say a lot is that at every era of VGC in the back of my mind, there's a couple things that really put the top players over the top compared to the crowd. And I think every passing year, there are things that were the tricks of the trade become more common knowledge, and they're more the standard expectation of like the bare minimum threshold of what you need to really accomplish anything of note. And I mean, there were tournaments way early in the days where like if you just um, knew how to specifically train your stats to be like specific numbers, like that was like a huge game changer, and then that became the thing that everybody was doing, and then um, just um, knowing the different online simulators you can use to practice, and the ability to practice online was something that not everybody who went to a regional would even think of doing, and now like everybody has uh, daily use of these
Yeah,
different
it's
simulators.
okay.
Uh, and I'm saying that broadly because one just so that I'm not actively promoting things that are
No, no,
not official on-brand material,
we appreciate that.
and but also at the same time, the iterations of different fan-made online simulators have just evolved over time, and the ones that people use are like nowhere near as the first ones by any means. And I think that so I think every year there's some things that used to be something that the really high level pros would do that are just kind of common knowledge now. And I think part of that's a good thing in the sense that we have some really wonderful players in our community that are very talented, but are also really trying to help the next generation and really trying to help people understand these concepts. And I think to some players, I think that's really their way of giving back to the community. And I think that, obviously we all have our own ways of doing that if we choose. Um, but I don't think it's all just like we're like infiltrating the secret meetings or anything like that. I think it's just we're all helping each other, and I think that's wonderful. And the age of, I mean, the internet has obviously existed the entire time we've been here, but I think that a lot of different countries used to have different play styles because we didn't really interact with each other as much as we do now. And I think the availability of being able to connect with other countries also has broadened our horizons and our mindsets and the different strategies that we bring to the table. That there used to be a long time ago, like almost certain stereotypes, some not necessarily really all that true, some that might have like some correlations. I wouldn't go as far as to say like causation, but you could hear people casually talk about like if they're from this country, they might have this kind of play style with their archetypes and things like that. And I think now we're we're communicating with each other at a local level and at an international level so much more that I think information is traveling very, very quickly in terms of not just what are the good players using in terms of Pokemon, but also sort of what their moves are, what their items are, what things really matter to them about how they approach practice and things like that. And so we're sharing in ways that we never have before. And in fairness, the game's also getting deeper. We're getting new mechanics every year. So there's things that just completely didn't exist before that exist now, which is fascinating.
Yeah, if I told you 10 years ago that, well, first of all, that the not only is the circuit still going, but now you can change the type of your Pokemon whenever you want, probably would have blown your mind and everyone else playing back then, including mine as a casual player. This next section is going to be a little more rapid fire in terms of favorites, and the first is you've played in every single format of VGC or competitive doubles, official competitive doubles that has been out there. What's your favorite?
I think I'm
Pick
gonna
one.
say,
Pick your favorite child.
if you're asking me to be rapid fire, I'm gonna say VGC 13.
So what?
Uh,
For our listeners, what generation or like what sort of format was VGC 13?
VGC 13 was Pokemon Black 2 and White 2. It was still doubles, still team previews, still all the Swiss rounds, everything that we know and love for the most part. But interestingly enough, VGC 13 was the last year before we had like the gimmick of the game kind of a thing, where there'd be Mega Evolution for Gen 6, Z-Moves for Gen 7, Dynamax for Gen 8, and then Terrestrialization for Gen 9. So VGC 13 was the last one where we were just playing what I guess for some people would call it Pokemon in its purest form. And I think that these games, mechanics of the actual performance of the game aside, Black and White 2 are phenomenal, but things like, aside from stuff like, health bars being slower and things like that, the thing that was really fascinating was that you had a lot of margin of error, where you had a lot more, because there weren't these big heavy hitting things that just came right out of the bat swinging. There was a lot of room to turn around a game that maybe didn't start the way you wanted. And I think that that was something that was really interesting. And I was trying as hard as I could to pick a year where I'm being objective, because obviously like my two best performing years are 2016 and 2022. And 2013 was actually one of my worst years. 2012, I managed to go the entire year without a single championship point, despite having a lot of experience beforehand. So the new crowd just really just came in and just blew me away. And 2013, I was not doing that much better, but I did have a couple wins that I was really proud of here and there. But ultimately, I was not doing particularly stellar. And I think it really speaks volumes that I have really fond memories of 2013, despite the fact that I had no real performances that are like if you go to Wikipedia, you're not going to find anything I had 2013. You might find something of 2014 or 2016, but 2013 is just, I may as well. It's like I didn't exist. But I think I was trying really hard to not just say the year that I did the best was my favorite format, because I think there's a bias where a lot of players will say the year that they performed the best was like the best format or like the most balanced one or the most true one. And then the one that they did the worst in is like the one that is their least favorite. But I actually had a really great time in 2013. I think I had a lot of fun joking around with players, and I had a lot of fun. Uh, you you couldn't customize your trainer card in the sense that you were customizing it like your profile picture, but there was like a little Mad Lib you could do, and just seeing people get really creative uh, and goofy with those is the most on brand appropriate way I can say that. People would uh, find ways to give the company reason to never make this a thing we could do again.
Yeah. My next question, going on with that, what is your favorite event that you've played in? What doesn't have to be the same in the same format, but just general your favorite event.
So my first thought when you say that is not like favorite like tournaments, but favorite like side event kind of a thing. So this might not be what you're asking for,
No,
but
no, and whatever you say counts.
way back in the 2011 era, there was a side event that they would do at the regional championship called the King of the Hill. And what you would do is there'd just be someone who starts there. You get in line, you challenge them to a match, you beat them in a match, you're the king of the hill, and then someone else has to try and take you off the hill. And if you managed to stay there for a certain amount of time, you'd get prizes. And how long you were able to stay there would also influence like what kind of prizes you got. And that was a very goofy, weirdly territorial thing. And it was kind of funny because um, watching people actively try to counter team someone and have them still try to hold on for dear life as long as they possibly could was just a very goofy experience. Um, I'll try to not mention specifically professor events because I know like that's not really the focus of this particular conversation, but there's a lot of really wonderful professor-based professor cups that happen at regionals. So sometimes I joke with people that there's like the junior, senior, master division, and the professor division is like a secret fourth option. But uh, those formats are always great, and um, we don't have
So what?
those at every regional championship or international, but when they do, like I always have so much respect for the TOs that put those together. In just to give you a couple like very loose examples, like we just this past year had one that was Little Cup, so all level 5 Pokemon, and then that was really crazy because you got to see stuff like Yanma and Girafarig just really go all in, and then the base stats are so different at level 5 too. So like Girafarig, like Farigiraf in VDC 24 is seen as like a slow trick room Pokemon, but Girafarig at level 5 is outspeeding at least more than half the meta, which is wild. And then in terms of other side events that I really like, I mean, the old man in me always loves retro events and seeing people try to look at these old games and be like, how did they do this? This is like what made sense here. Uh, I always love and I always love when people have a side event where the game is being played in a way that we did not intend. So there was a regional championship in I want to say it was either 2017 or I think it was 2017 where uh, Pokemon Go was brand new, and so we didn't really have a PvP scene then, and so they would have events like who can gain the most EXP in like a very short period of time, or who can run the farthest distance throughout the entire weekend. And me as a former cross country runner from high school and college, I was very very interested in that one, and that was very fun. So really, I think side events, if you've got a side event that can give people who maybe aren't super into VGC a way to have fun. I think, and something that they're not used to doing. I think those are always kind of more broadly the things I look for in what I would call like a really really fun event.
Yeah, and with you bringing up the side events, I know I sent you some questions beforehand. I am going to switch up a little, and also goes into what you were saying with people from your generation of the game, the veteran players trying to give back in ways. You mentioned to me about a year and a half ago or so that your main goal was not to compete anymore, but to give back to the community. And so as of last year, you became one of the premier tournament organizers in the New England area, with your Cheese League events, which are some of the most fun that I've had. Pretty much your events are the only ones I've been able to go to for the last year. But at first, why was your decision to give back becoming a TO, and like why did you first choose for that to be your role as the I'm going to give back?
Yeah, great questions. So I think even beyond Pokemon, there's sort of like a broad saying you hear a lot where there's two types of people in the world. The ones that say like, I had to go through this one thing and I'm going to work really hard to make sure you don't have to go through it, or it's better when you go through it. And then the other crowd is sort of like, well, I had to go through this thing and it's not fair if you don't have to go through that thing. So you should have to do it too. And I've always been in the former. I think just a healthy human mind just generally wants the next generation to have it a little bit easier than the one before it. And I think that there's so much where I really love the game, and I think the game has given me so many wonderful years and wonderful memories, wonderful friendships, and I want others to be able to have that too. And I think that so primarily the first part was I wanted to give back, and I think um, largely when I think about what I would love to make better about the community, it all comes down to accessibility as the prime thing. And I say that as an umbrella term of a lot of different things. So uh, for those who are just hearing the word cheese league as this broad phrase, cheese is my dog, and uh, he's
Cheese
not.
is actually the number one being in the New England VGC scene. It's Cheese, and then everyone else, like the players, TOs, everyone's under Cheese. Cheese is the most important being at any event.
Yeah, um, a little dog giving serotonin at an event hopefully
Big
goes a
time.
long way towards just keeping us all sane when we're just trying to play this game that is win or lose five or six times a day at least. But in terms of the accessibility part, I really want everything about it to be accessible. And I say that, again, as an umbrella term. Like, I think I want a venue where people feel safe and comfortable being themselves, so for those who don't know, I work very frequently with this place called Excelsior Games, which is queer and trans owned. And um, I specifically looked for this venue, and a big thank you to Tom Farah, who recommended me and referred me to the owner. Uh, I think this came at a time where I think a lot of our queer and trans BGC players are nervous about different regional locations, and even if TPCI does a phenomenal job having a safe venue experience when you're actually there, that says nothing about the going through airport security, coming into a hostile to queer community airport and things like that. And so wanting to make sure that players had somewhere to go was really important to me. But then also I think of accessibility also as price, because I think in the years that I was really really going for my World's invites, I think there were some TOs that were very generous and would just try to host events and just try to get people there. And then there were some, and I do not say this as intending any sort of, I don't want to paint the picture that like all TOs are like this or too many TOs are like this, but there were one or two that would be very aware that how many events you would have to do to get the points you need to qualify for Worlds, and they would be very aware that like you probably need you're not going to get points every single time you do it, even still. So they know you're going to need a lot of locals, and so I had an experience where one TO was not only charging like ridiculous amounts for the entry fee, like $20 or $30 in 2016 money, mind you, but then would actually escalate those prices as the season progressed, so that when people were more desperate for points, they would raise the price because they knew that people would do it because they had no choice because they were too far in by that point. Or and that part always bothered me. And so I wanted to make sure. And so going back to the first thing I said about like I had to go this thing, so I want to make sure I work so that others don't have to. I've worked really hard to make my events as affordable as I can. Um, so I've been looking for ways to cut costs, both in terms of just like running the event itself, so I'm not going too in the red, but then also just trying to keep the price for as long as I possibly can stand it. I'm going to keep the price capped at $5 an event. It doesn't matter if it's a PC, it doesn't matter if it's a mid-season, because I just want people to be able to play, and I want people to be able to find the game affordable. Um, and then in different eras, when there were far fewer players, I would help people breed Pokemon and things like that. I just like make the game more accessible, so you didn't have to so like if somebody was not able to get everything themselves just because of money constraints or time constraints from their own job life or things like that, or if they just had like certain sensory disabilities where they couldn't really like do certain parts of the game for too long. Like I wanted to help people get the Pokemon they needed. That's much less feasible these days just because there's so many people, so I can't possibly say yes to everybody I'd love to help. But every once in a while, somebody might come to me and I'll do my best to say yes. Um, but then I think that so a lot of it is just I want people to have someone in their corner. And I make a very big distinction that I want to be a professor, but I am usually not the biggest fan of being a judge if I have to be, because and that part of that just like the sheer conflict of interest of next year will be my 20th year in competitive Pokemon scene, and it's arguably not possible for me to be in a judge position and not run into somebody. I'd have to make a ruling on somebody I know. So I'm much a big fan of the supportive roles. So for those who have seen me at regional events, I'm usually on the paper team where and I love doing that because I get to cheer people on and really just get to see their wins and celebrate their wins with them, and then help new players kind of guide them to where they need to go. So I think in terms of the decision to be a TO, I think a lot of it was 2022. I'm not going to say it was my last ever year competing, because I still like will play every once in a while, but I think that was the last year where like the player was my number one priority. I think I feel like the game has been really good to me. I feel like I've had some good years, and I just want to make sure that others have good years too. And whenever possible, I'd love to take the opportunities that I get from being on staff to just kind of talk to the right people and just say like, hey, here's some things I've heard from the community about ways to make things more queer friendly or more women friendly or more racially equitable, things like that. And I want to make it very clear that even if certain changes take a long time, TPCI is always listening, and they're always trying to make things better for the players in that regard. So I definitely know there are some people that want change to happen right away, and it's understandable because in the worlds of bigotry, like things are always happening so quickly, and they're always happening now. And so hearing that things are going to take time to change is never the answer you want to hear. But I have a lot of faith that people are doing their best, and they're working out things. I strayed a little bit from the question. I apologize.
No. I think, especially when you talk about accessibility, you brought up to me, and that was something where I never thought of it. Where if someone had like a sensory issue where they wouldn't be able to like get the Pokemon, and how you want to like help them with that. And I mean, from my end, issues of like, I'm not queer, I'm not a woman, so those are spaces that I never think of, and I'm sure that a lot of our listeners, it's not something we really dive into, on whether it's on the podcast or just even in our everyday interactions with the game. So to hear you talk about it, and that it's a massive part of why you want to the way you want to give back, I think that's actually, it's very important for us and the listeners to talk about, because these are aspects of the game that still need to improve. That it's not just Scarlet and Violet themselves might be the buggiest games. That's the big issue. There are people who don't feel safe at events or uncomfortable at events. I know many people who decided not to go to certain events because of the state that it was held in, because they just didn't feel comfortable.
Yeah, and even the ones that go. If you have viewers that have not really done a deep dive into just kind of like how pervasive just some of these issues can be. And I say this like with all the love in the world, that like, the community as a whole is largely pretty good. But so let me give you an example. So it's not just about feeling safe going to the event; it's also about performance at the event. So like if somebody, so there was an event, and to respect both the players and the staff, I'll try to be vague with the timeline of when this happened. But it was in a very transphobic community, and there was a player that just like really needed to go to the bathroom, and the locals there, like, and I say the local players there were just like so like not okay with them doing this, and so like there was a scenario where like they didn't feel safe going into one bathroom because they would be perceived as doing something predatory when they just need to go, and there'd be another, and then the other bathroom was not safe because anyone in that bathroom would just beat them up for trying it or for just being different in their space. And so like having to hold it for 9 rounds is obviously going to affect your performance. And then if somebody comes at you and is really aggressive with you, like that is going to affect your mental psyche, which is also going to affect your performance. And so one of the very circular logics you'll see is someone who's like really not in favor of making changes to the community to make things better. Like they might make the argument like, well, why are we trying so hard to change the rules to appeal for such a small percentage of the community? But the reality is the queer and trans community is so much larger than people realize. It's just that if we're making the events so hostile that they're not performing well, we're not going to see them in the CP standings. And if we're making it so hostile they don't feel comfortable going, they're not going to be there to represent themselves. And so there's always a circular thought that we're making accommodations for such a small percentage of the community. And obviously it's true that the queer and trans community isn't like over 50% of the community per se, but like it's always so much bigger than you think. And the things that do make things unfriendly towards the queer community are affecting and manipulating the numbers of how much you're going to see that, and it's going to affect your mindset of how pervasive you think certain issues are.
No, it's very important to get into because it's, again, we don't have that voice. I don't think, and this is just coming from me. I'm not going to speak for my other co-hosts, but it's the same exact thing where we don't have those experiences in terms of having to live with that, and so not that we don't know it exists, but it's very difficult, at least for me, to bring up an issue. I say this, we didn't plan this, but I think it is important that you do bring this up, because I don't feel like I can properly do it justice, because how can you talk about a situation that you really don't have any experience in? And so I think it's very important to have you as this voice to support this community. And of course, everyone at Littleroot Lessons, we are allies to it, and we all think it is super important. It's just that we didn't have the right framing for it to dive into it properly, and you do. And for you to bring this up, it's actually really amazing. Not what I expected. I think this is super important, especially recording this, and this episode is going to come out during Pride Month.
Oh, happy Pride. Amazing. Also, great
Yeah.
turnaround that we're recording this and it's going to come out this month. Great job at that. So I should give the disclaimer. There are certain things where I want to advocate, but I wouldn't have, in a manner of speaking, the same right to talk about certain things as others with lived experience. So I'm openly queer, but I am also pretty cisgender at the end of the day. And I think that, but I think a big part of it is having been around so long, I don't just carry along my memories of the game. I carry along every player who's had a bad experience and has talked to me about that, and I take with me mentally to events like all the people that quit just because the game wasn't very hostile to them. So there's one player I deeply value from the 2014-2015 area, who she was phenomenally good at the game and was getting top 64 at the national level in her first year, but just quit basically just because the local scene was just so unsympathetic to people making fun of her and making fun of just generally trans people, that she just kind of decided to go to different communities, and I always feel bad about that because I feel like we are so much better now, but I always wish that one, we're making progress faster. I always wish we were making progress faster, and I always wish that that progress existed at younger times. Um, but I think that even if we, obviously the you have to balance good intentions with good impact, and constantly revise yourself so that you're. And I say this of myself too. Like I need to constantly revise myself so that I am representing people the way they want to be represented. But I think for a lot of these changes, having 1,000 imperfect voices trying to do the right thing is always better than having one person doing it perfectly, trying to get the right thing. Um, with the disclaimer that we learn and grow along the way.
Yes. And I will say from experience going to your events and just New England events in general, I think you do a phenomenal job. I know that the queer people at our events, at least from what I see, they feel a lot safer. They feel more like they feel accepted. They feel comfortable at these events. And so I think, at least on a local level, from what I see, from my perspective, I think you're already doing an amazing job. And when you're trying to make such a big push, a lot of times the first place you can truly affect and change is your local community. And I can see, like, in these locals, you're doing a wonderful job. And hopefully, um, other people, other TOs, not only just within New England, but elsewhere in the community, can take your lead at making such amazing and safe and friendly events for everyone involved.
uh, Now, I don't want to take too much credit because I feel for myself I still have a lot of room to grow. But I think that um, for those that are interested in doing this, I think like one of the biggest reasons I was so intent on specifically a queer and trans owned venue was because um, there are going to be things where I, with all the right intentions, like want to make a safe space, but there might be things that I didn't think of that someone with lived experience would, and so it's always important to make sure those voices are part of the leadership. And this actually reminded me back to the question you were asking about, like just the decision to become a TO. So I do have a certain amount of optimism in terms of I think TPCI is trying to do the right thing. It often won't look that way because the events are planned years and years in advance. Just because like getting all of the staging and getting all of the branding and all of the different things that come with it, and like getting all of the catering and all the different events components to coordinate with each other just takes so many years to put together. So like the things we're advocating for now are things that they couldn't even respond to for at least like several years worth of events. And so it always looks like they're doing nothing when they're really, really like writing things down and like trying to do what they can. Um, but with that being said, we always wish that these changes would happen faster. And one of the things that I talk about with another friend of mine is that even if we can't make the changes we want at the national or like international level with Pokemon, we can still change our local communities for the better. And I think that even if there are certain things we can't do at a regional level to make people feel safe, we can do those. We can host events of our own that do that. And I think that is something that I thought was really valuable when I was thinking about like maybe instead of being a player, like I want to be a TO for a little while, just because I think that there are changes I would love to make with the community that I can't do on my own and I can't do with the power that I have, but I can host an event and hear feedback from people and then adjust my own event to match that. And I think that that's a very valuable thing. And even if it seems like that's not enough to people, like if you have thousands of TOs doing something, it normalizes it in ways that isn't happening before, and that still plays a big role in making certain changes faster. And I think that there's so much value to being an inclusive TO.
No, and we really appreciate you for diving into that, and thank you. So we do have one more question. It's something that I ask everyone who sits in for the Littleroot record. What is your favorite thing to cook?
My favorite thing to cook.
Yeah, I didn't give you this one because it has to be on the spot.
Oh, that's okay. I mean, and I think there's certain questions that are better if you force someone to think on their
Yeah.
feet. Uh, in terms of cooking in like a stove perspective, I think that I love making like fried rice dishes where I joke with people that I kind of cook in a very Breath of the Wild sense, that I just take a bunch of things from my fridge, throw them in a pan at once, and then just
See what happens.
see what happens. But if you just have like a thing of, if you have a rice cooker and you throw some stuff in a pan and you just throw a bunch of veggies in and then saute it, sooner or later something will taste presentable, and uh, you can get a lot of mileage out of just frying up some rice, rotating the vegetables so you get a different nutritional diet, and then just having a protein that gives it a little bit of flavor, and then obviously like hot sauce or something. Uh, so that's something I would say is probably my go-to in terms of thing I do the most often. If you're asking what is like my favorite in the sense of like what am I actually good at doing, I make a mean scone.
Okay.
I really love to bake scones, and although that's something that's also inspired by the fact that there's such a margin of error with baking scones, where you can completely botch the instructions or the recipe and it'll still come out reasonably well as long as you just have the same ingredients. So you're actually supposed to separate the ingredients into two bowls and then mix it later in the process. But there's so many days where I just have like a uh, not necessarily a bad day, but just like mentally my batteries are dry and I just forget and I just throw it all in one bowl. And you'd be surprised how passable you can still make a pastry if you just have the right ingredients. But yeah, so definitely recommend. Scones are a good way to take a break from VGC if you ever need it, because you're really working with your hands, so it forces you to be in the moment and take a break from uh, the heavy thinking that VGC requires.
Well, thank you very much for joining us this week. Are there any shout outs you want to give? Anything you want to plug? Places that our listeners can find you?
Oh, I am aggressively hiding from the
I know
internet, so
you are
I.
aggressively offline, which is something that I should strive to be. But here I am, multiple times a week, talking into a microphone
I don't know. I don't know
online.
if I go as far as to say I'm offline, but I am largely. So I don't have a Twitter account. My Discord's relatively private. My
Mm,
uh, I would say, in terms of finding me, I would say Discord's probably the best way. But I think that, man, the shout outs, like there's just so many people I want to, I, 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 I think that would be a podcast in and of itself if I
yeah,
tried to get everybody. Uh, I mean, I genuinely think that uh, the majority of players I talk to are not only just amazing people, but also just generally better at the game than I am. And so uh, you could name any name, and I would say that person is either very skilled or very compassionate or very kind, and some, in the ideal scenario, both. Um, yeah, I'm even hesitant to really like name anyone in particular, because I feel like the second I do, someone's gonna be like, well, "What about me?"
no,
But I will say, so many wonderful people, and I I love everybody who goes to my local scene, uh, and they make the game fun. And I if you're someone who comes to my locals, I just really appreciate you, and I hope that I can do a good job so that you'll appreciate me too.
we do appreciate you, Chalkey. We do. And that is a wrap on episode 6 of the Littleroot Record. Please make sure to follow us on our Twitter at LR Lessons. Leave a like, leave a comment, leave your experiences at events. If you had positive experiences and or maybe things you want to change, let us know so I can let Chalky know so he can go and make those changes happen. Um, Again, thank you very much to Chalky and thank you very much to all of our listeners. We will see you with the next edition and have a great week.